Some accidents happen so many times they stop being accidents at all. I'm State Trooper Marcus Rivera, 12 years with the Oregon State Police, assigned to the Columbia River Gorge corridor along Interstate 84. It's beautiful country during the day, the Columbia cutting between Oregon and Washington, waterfalls cascading down cliff faces, Mount Hood rising in the distance like a promise. But at night, especially during the winter months, it becomes something else entirely. The fog rolls in from the river, the curves become treacherous, and the highway turns into a ribbon of black ice that's claimed more lives than I care to count. I work the graveyard shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., covering the stretch between Troutdale and Hood River. It's lonely work, but I prefer it that way. Less traffic, fewer complications, just me and the highway and the occasional drunk driver or stranded motorist. The Columbia River Gorge has a way of humbling people, the sheer walls of basalt rising on both sides, the constant sound of water, the feeling that you're traveling through something ancient and indifferent to human concerns. Winter in the gorge means black ice, freezing fog, and accidents. Lots of accidents. The highway follows the river through a series of curves and elevation changes that can catch inexperienced drivers off guard. Add rain or ice to the equation, and what should be a routine drive becomes genuinely dangerous. I've worked fatal crashes where vehicles went through the guardrail and rolled down the embankment toward the river. I've seen cars wrapped around trees, semis jackknifed across multiple lanes, motorcycles that became unrecognizable twisted metal. You develop a professional detachment to it after a while. You have to, or the job will eat you alive. Each crash becomes a report to file, measurements to take, statements to collect. You focus on the technical details, skid marks, point of impact, contributing factors, because the human cost is too heavy to carry every single day. The call came in at 2:37 a.m. on a Tuesday in November. Dispatch reported a two-vehicle collision at milepost 34, eastbound lanes, possible fatalities. The location was familiar, a sweeping curve where the highway bends away from the river, a spot where drivers often take the turn too fast or misjudge the radius in poor visibility conditions. I acknowledged the call and headed east from my position near Corbett. The roads were slick with a combination of rain and early frost, and fog drifted across the highway in patches that reduced visibility to maybe 50 yards. Classic conditions for a serious accident. When I arrived at milepost 34, I found exactly what dispatch had described. Two vehicles, a red Honda Civic and a white pickup truck, locked together in the eastbound lanes. The Honda had apparently crossed the center line and struck the pickup head-on. Both vehicles were severely damaged, steam rising from their crumpled hoods in the cold air. I radioed for emergency medical services and the accident investigation team, then approached the vehicles to check for survivors. The Honda's driver was a young woman, maybe early 20s, slumped over the steering wheel, no pulse. The pickup's driver was an older man, probably in his 50s, thrown partially through the windshield, also deceased. I secured the scene, set up flares to redirect traffic, and began the standard procedures for a fatal accident investigation. The Honda's registration showed it belonged to Jessica Martinez, age 22, from Portland. The pickup was registered to Robert Chen, age 54, from Hood River. Two people heading in opposite directions whose paths crossed at the worst possible moment in the worst possible conditions. The medical examiner arrived around 4 a.m., followed by the accident reconstruction team. By sunrise, we had the vehicles towed and the highway reopened. I filed my report, noting the contributing factors of wet pavement, reduced visibility, and excessive speed for conditions. Case closed, or so I thought. The next night, at exactly 2:37 a.m., dispatch called with an identical report. Two-vehicle collision at milepost 34. Eastbound lanes, possible fatalities. I assumed it was a mistake, maybe a delayed report from the previous night's accident, somehow getting entered twice into the system. But when I arrived at the scene, I found the same two vehicles, a red Honda Civic and a white pickup truck, in exactly the same positions as the night before. The Honda's driver was the same young woman, Jessica Martinez, slumped over the steering wheel with the same fatal injuries. The pickup's driver was the same older man, Robert Chen, thrown through the windshield in precisely the same manner. Even the pattern of broken glass on the asphalt was identical. I called dispatch immediately. Control, this is Rivera at milepost 34. I need clarification on this collision report. Didn't we work this exact same accident last night? Negative, Rivera. No record of any accidents at that location in the past week. This is a fresh call. I checked my own report from the previous night. It existed in my personal files, but when I tried to access it through the state database, I found nothing. No record of Jessica Martinez or Robert Chen, no accident report, no tow truck dispatch, no medical examiner response. But here were the same two vehicles, with the same two victims, in the exact same configuration as before. I worked the scene again, following the same procedures, taking the same measurements, filing the same report. The medical examiner who arrived was the same one from the night before, but when I mentioned the previous incident, he looked at me as if I were speaking a foreign language. Rivera, I've never worked an accident with you at this location. This is my first time responding to milepost 34 in months. The pattern continued for 2 weeks. Every night at 2:37 a.m., the same call. Every night, the same scene at milepost 34. The same red Honda Civic, the same white pickup truck, the same two victims dying in exactly the same way. By the 5th night, I had memorized every detail. The Honda would be positioned at a 37-degree angle from the center line. The pickup's front bumper would be compressed exactly 18 inches. Jessica Martinez would have a compound fracture of her left arm and massive head trauma. Robert Chen would have glass embedded in his throat and chest cavity. The skid marks would measure 43 feet for the Honda, 29 feet for the pickup. Each morning, when I returned to check the location during daylight hours, the highway would be pristine. No skid marks, no debris, no sign that any accident had ever occurred. The guardrail was intact, the pavement unmarked, the shoulder clear of any evidence. I started arriving early, positioning myself at milepost 34 before 2:37 a.m., hoping to witness whatever was happening. But each time I watched the highway during those crucial minutes, I saw nothing. No vehicles approaching, no collision, no sounds of impact, just empty asphalt stretching into the darkness. Yet the moment I turned away or checked my radio, the call would come in, and when I looked back, the wreckage would be there waiting for me. On the 8th night, I decided to investigate the victims' backgrounds. According to their identification, Jessica Martinez lived in Portland, and Robert Chen lived in Hood River. I called both addresses during my shift, expecting to reach family members or roommates who could tell me about their final night alive. Jessica's phone was answered by Jessica herself. Hello? Is this Jessica Martinez? Yes, who is this? This is State Trooper Rivera, with the Oregon State Police. Ma'am, I need to ask you some questions about your whereabouts tonight. My whereabouts? I'm at home, officer. Is there a problem? I could hear a television in the background, the sound of someone living a normal evening at home. Ma'am, what kind of car do you drive? A red Honda Civic. Why are you asking? I hung up and immediately called Robert Chen's number. He answered on the second ring, sounding groggy but alive. Chen residence? Mr. Chen, this is State Trooper Rivera. I need to confirm your current location. I'm in bed, officer. It's almost 3 in the morning. Is everything all right? What kind of vehicle do you drive, sir? White Ford pickup. Officer, what's this about? I ended the call and sat in my patrol car at milepost 34, staring at the wreckage of their vehicles while knowing they were both alive and safe at home. The Honda Civic's license plate matched Jessica's registration exactly. The pickup's plate matched Robert's, and somehow, the same two people were dying in the same accident every night, while continuing to live their normal lives elsewhere. On the 14th night, I brought a camera to document everything. I photographed the vehicles, the victims, the scene measurements, every detail I could capture. But when I reviewed the images later, they showed only empty highway. The photos were perfectly clear: asphalt, guardrails, darkness, but no accident, no vehicles, no bodies. The last time I responded to milepost 34 was on a Thursday night in December. The call came in at 2:37 a.m. as always, but when I arrived, the scene was different. The vehicles were there, positioned exactly as they had been for 2 weeks, but this time there was a third car, my own patrol vehicle, with me inside it, slumped over the steering wheel. I stood on the asphalt, looking at my own body, watching blood pool beneath my forehead where it had struck the dashboard. My doppelganger's radio crackled with dispatch, calling for a welfare check on my location. I drove away that night and never returned to milepost 34 during the graveyard shift. I requested a transfer to the day shift, citing personal reasons. My supervisor approved it without question, though he seemed confused when I mentioned my concerns about the recurring accident reports. According to him, I had never worked a fatal collision at milepost 34 during my entire career. But sometimes, when I drive that stretch of highway during daylight hours, I notice things that shouldn't be there. Faint skid marks that appear and disappear depending on the angle of the sunlight. Fragments of glass in the shoulder that weren't there moments before. And occasionally, just at the edge of my vision, the outline of two vehicles locked together in a collision that happened and continues to happen every night at 2:37 a.m. I don't work graveyard shifts anymore, but I know someone else does. I wonder if they've started receiving calls about accidents at milepost 34 and whether they've realized yet that some crashes are too persistent to ever truly end. There are lines in the desert that shouldn't exist, waiting for drivers who will never reach the end. I'm State Trooper Linda Hayes, 9 years with the California Highway Patrol, stationed out of Bridgeport in Mono County. My patrol area covers Highway 395 as it runs north through the eastern Sierra Nevada from the Nevada border up toward Reno. It's some of the most remote highway in California. Long stretches where you might not see another vehicle for an hour, surrounded by sagebrush and alkaline flats that stretch to the horizon under an endless sky. The eastern Sierra is truck country. 395 is a major freight corridor connecting Southern California to the Pacific Northwest, and the big rigs run it day and night. 18-wheelers hauling everything from produce to electronics, logging trucks coming down from Oregon, livestock haulers moving cattle to market. During peak seasons, the truck traffic can be constant, a steady stream of commerce flowing through some of the emptiest landscape in America. Most of my work involves commercial vehicle enforcement, weight violations, logbook infractions, drivers pushing their hours beyond legal limits. The trucking industry is heavily regulated, and for good reason. A fully loaded semi can weigh 80,000 pounds, and when something goes wrong at highway speeds, the consequences are catastrophic. I've worked accidents where trucks lost their brakes, coming down steep grades, jackknifed across multiple lanes, or simply ran off the road when drivers fell asleep at the wheel. The weigh stations are a crucial part of the enforcement system. Every few hundred miles along major freight corridors, you'll find these facilities where trucks are required to stop for inspection. Weight checks to ensure they're not overloading the highway infrastructure. Safety inspections to catch mechanical problems before they cause accidents. Documentation reviews to make sure drivers aren't violating hours of service regulations. The old weigh station at milepost 147 had been closed since 2008, a victim of budget cuts and the consolidation of inspection facilities. I'd driven past it hundreds of times over the years, a concrete ramp leading off the highway to a cluster of abandoned buildings, the scales and inspection bays slowly being reclaimed by desert vegetation. The California Department of Transportation had installed barriers across the access road and posted signs warning that the facility was no longer operational. The call came in on a Wednesday evening in September. A motorist had reported what appeared to be a massive traffic backup on northbound 395, somewhere around the old way station. I was about 20 miles south of the location, finishing up a routine inspection at a truck stop near the Nevada border. Control to 721. We've got reports of possible commercial vehicle congestion, northbound 395, in the vicinity of milepost 147. Can you respond and assess the situation? 721 copy. En route to investigate. Traffic backups weren't uncommon on 395, usually caused by accidents or construction zones. But as I drove north, I couldn't see any obvious signs of congestion. The highway was moving normally, with typical evening truck traffic, but nothing that would indicate a backup. When I reached milepost 147, I could see what the caller had reported. There was indeed a line of trucks, but not on the main highway. The vehicles were queued up on the access road, leading to the abandoned way station, a perfect line of semi-trucks and trailers that stretched back from the closed facility and merged with the main highway traffic. I pulled onto the shoulder and observed the situation. The trucks were moving slowly but steadily, as if the way station were still operational and they were waiting their turn for inspection. Each vehicle had its running lights on, hazard flashers blinking in sequence, exactly like trucks do when they're required to enter a way station for mandatory inspection. But the way station had been closed for 15 years. I radioed dispatch to confirm the facility's status. Control, can you verify the operational status of the way station at milepost 147? 721. That facility has been closed since 2008. No current operations. I counted at least 30 trucks in the line, with more joining from the main highway as I watched. Big rigs with various commercial loads, all following the same pattern, slowing down, activating hazard lights, and merging into the queue, leading to a facility that no longer existed. I decided to investigate more closely. I drove to the front of the line, where the access road curves around a small hill that blocks the view of the way station itself from the highway. What I found there made me radio immediately for backup. The concrete barriers that had blocked the access road were gone. The warning signs about the facility being closed were nowhere to be seen. The road surface, which should have been cracked and overgrown after 15 years of abandonment, appeared to be in perfect condition. But when I drove around the hill to where the way station buildings should be, I found only empty desert. No buildings, no scales, no inspection bays. Just bare ground, covered in sagebrush and desert grass, as if nothing had ever been built there. Yet the line of trucks continued up the access road, past where I was parked, and disappeared into an area where there was nothing for them to be driving toward. I got out of my patrol car and walked to where the road seemed to end. The asphalt simply stopped at a certain point, but I could still hear the sounds of diesel engines and air brakes, the distinctive noise of heavy vehicles maneuvering in tight spaces. The sound seemed to be coming from empty air. Control, 721. I need additional units at milepost 147. I have a situation here that requires supervisory response. Copy, 721. Can you describe the nature of the situation? I looked at the empty desert, where dozens of trucks had apparently driven, listening to engine sounds that had no visible source. Control, I need you to run a historical check on the way station at milepost 147. Specifically, I need to know if there were ever any accidents or incidents involving commercial vehicles at that location. While I waited for backup, I walked back toward the highway to observe the line of trucks. They were still coming, still following the same pattern. As each semi approached milepost 147, the driver would slow down, activate hazard lights, and merge onto the access road, leading to a facility that existed and didn't exist simultaneously. I tried to flag down one of the trucks, but the driver seemed to look right through me. I stood directly in front of a slow-moving Kenworth, waving my arms and flashing my light, but the truck continued forward as if I weren't there. When it passed, I could clearly see the driver behind the wheel, an older man wearing a baseball cap, hands on the steering wheel, eyes focused straight ahead. But when I ran the truck's license plate, it came back as a vehicle that had been destroyed in a fatal accident in 2007. The driver, according to the records, had died when his truck lost its brakes, coming down a steep grade and crashed at the bottom of the access road leading to the weigh station. I checked more plates as the trucks continued past me. A Peterbilt registered to a company that had gone out of business in 2005. A Freightliner whose driver had suffered a fatal heart attack while waiting in line for inspection in 2006. A Mack truck that had jackknifed on black ice and rolled over near the weigh station in 2009. Every truck in the line belonged to a driver who had died in accidents related to the weigh station, spanning the entire period from when it opened in 1983 until it closed in 2008. Backup arrived in the form of Sergeant Morrison from the Bridgeport office and Trooper Davis from the Lee Vining station. When they pulled up, I was standing beside my patrol car, watching a steady stream of trucks drive into empty desert while listening to the sounds of an active weigh station that didn't exist. "Hayes, what's the situation here?" I tried to explain what I was seeing, but even as I spoke, I could hear how impossible it sounded. Sergeant Morrison looked at the access road, which from his perspective probably appeared to be blocked by concrete barriers and warning signs. "Linda, I don't see any trucks. The access road is closed, has been for years." I looked where he was pointing. The concrete barriers were back. The warning signs were in place. The access road was completely overgrown with desert vegetation, as if no vehicle had driven on it in over a decade. But I could still hear the diesel engines, still see the line of trucks stretching back toward the highway, still watch drivers who had died years ago, continuing their eternal approach to a weigh station that existed only for them. Trooper Davis walked to where I claimed the trucks were passing and held up his hand as if to stop traffic. Nothing happened. No brakes, no air horns, no reaction at all. From his perspective, he was standing in an empty desert, waving at sagebrush. "Control, 721. Disregard the previous request for backup. False alarm caused by optical illusion from highway lighting." I filed my report as a traffic advisory, noting that unusual lighting conditions near milepost 147 might cause drivers to perceive non-existent traffic patterns. I didn't mention the trucks that continued to drive into empty desert, or the sounds of an active inspection facility where nothing had existed for 15 years. The historical check I had requested came back with interesting information. Between 1983 and 2008, the weigh station at milepost 147 had been the site of 17 fatal accidents involving commercial vehicles. Mechanical failures, driver fatigue, medical emergencies, weather-related crashes. The facility had earned a reputation among truckers as an unlucky place, somewhere bad things happened to good drivers. But every time I patrol that stretch of 395, I see the line. Trucks that died with their drivers, still following regulations that no longer apply, still reporting to a weigh station that exists in whatever place regulations go when they're no longer enforced. And sometimes, late at night when the highway is empty except for me, I hear my radio crackle with inspection reports from the abandoned facility. Drivers calling in their loads, their destinations, their hours of service, broadcasting into a void that somehow still receives and processes their compliance with rules that transcended the buildings meant to enforce them. The line never gets shorter, and it never reaches the end. Some names echo louder than the voices that once spoke them. I'm State Trooper Kevin Park, 7 years with the Nevada Highway Patrol, assigned to the Carson City District, covering Route 50 between Fernley and Fallon. It's honest work in honest country, wide open desert stretches where you can see for miles in every direction, broken up by small farming communities that depend on the Truckee River and the Carson Sink for irrigation. The loneliest road in America, they call it, though that's actually Route 50 further east. This section gets plenty of traffic, especially during harvest season, when agricultural trucks move between the fields and the processing facilities. Route 50 through Churchill County runs straight as a surveyor's line for most of its length, which makes it popular with drivers who want to make up time. The speed limit is 75, but on those long straightaways with nothing but sagebrush and alkali flats stretching to the horizon, it's easy to let your foot get heavy. That's where I come in, routine speed enforcement, mostly warnings for locals who know better, citations for out-of-state drivers who treat Nevada highways like their personal racetracks. The work is methodical and predictable. Set up radar at known enforcement locations, clock speeders, make stops, write citations or issue warnings. Most drivers are apologetic once they see the lights, claiming they didn't realize how fast they were going or didn't see any speed limit signs. A few get argumentative, but that comes with the territory. You develop a rhythm after a while. The approach, the greeting, the license and registration request, the brief conversation about why they were pulled over. Nevada requires front and rear license plates, which makes vehicle identification straightforward. The plates are issued sequentially by the Department of Motor Vehicles, so you can usually estimate a vehicle's age and registration history just by looking at the number sequence. Newer plates start with different letter combinations. Older ones follow patterns established decades ago. It's one of those details you pick up after years of running plates and writing citations. The stretch of Route 50 between mileposts 62 and 68 had been a regular enforcement location for me since I started working this district. Good sightlines, safe shoulder for traffic stops, and historically productive for speed enforcement. The terrain is typical Churchill County desert flat expanses of sparse vegetation with distant mountain ranges, creating a dramatic backdrop. During certain times of day, the light can play tricks on your eyes, creating mirages and heat distortions that make distant objects seem to shimmer and dance. I was set up at milepost 64 on a Tuesday morning in October, working the eastbound traffic as commuters headed from Carson City toward Fallon. The radar gun was showing typical patterns, most traffic flowing at 78 to 82 miles per hour, fast enough to justify warnings, but not quite citation-worthy. Around 9:30, a white sedan passed, doing 87 in the 75 zone. I pulled out and made the stop. Following standard procedure, the vehicle pulled over immediately, and the driver had his license and registration ready before I reached the window. Professional and courteous, exactly the kind of interaction that makes the job pleasant. Good morning. I'm Trooper Park with the Nevada Highway Patrol. The reason I stopped you is I clocked you at 87 miles per hour in a 75 zone. I understand, officer. I was probably going a little too fast. I took his documents and walked back to my patrol car to run the information. The license showed David Morrison, age 34, address in Reno, clean driving record, vehicle registration current. But when I looked at the license plate number I had written down, something felt wrong. The plate read, Nevada 7 Alpha Charlie 8492. I had seen that exact combination before, recently enough that it stuck in my memory. I ran it through the system, and what came back made me double-check my notes. The plate was registered to a 2019 Honda Accord that had been totaled in a fatal collision at milepost 65 on Route 50 in October of 2021. The registered owner was David Morrison, who had died in that accident. I walked back to the sedan, which was clearly not a 2019 Honda Accord. It was an older Nissan, maybe 2015 or 16, in good condition but obviously not the vehicle registered to that plate. Mr. Morrison, I need to ask you about your license plate. Can you tell me how long you've had this vehicle? About 2 years now. Bought it used from a dealer in Carson City. And the plates came with the vehicle? Yes, sir. Transferred them when I bought it. I looked at his license again. David Morrison, same address as the registration, same date of birth as the accident victim. But the man sitting in front of me was very much alive, talking to me in a normal voice, wearing a business suit that suggested he was heading to work at one of the government offices in Carson City. Mr. Morrison, have you ever been involved in any traffic accidents on Route 50? He paused, looking genuinely confused. No, officer. I'm a pretty careful driver. Why do you ask? I issued him a warning and sent him on his way, but the encounter bothered me enough that I pulled up the accident report from 2021. David Morrison, age 31 at the time, had lost control of his Honda Accord during a morning commute and struck a bridge abutment. Single vehicle fatality, speed estimated at over 90 miles per hour. The investigating officer noted that Morrison appeared to have fallen asleep at the wheel. An hour later, I clocked another speeder. Different car, different driver, but when I ran the plate, it came back as Nevada 7 Alpha Charlie 8492. Same registration, same David Morrison, same totaled Honda Accord from 2021. The driver this time was a woman in her 40s, driving a red pickup truck. When I asked for her license, she handed me a Nevada driver's license in the name of David Morrison. The photograph clearly showed the woman sitting in front of me, but the name, address, and personal information all belonged to the accident victim. Ma'am, can you explain why your license shows a male name? She looked at the license as if seeing it for the first time. I'm sorry, officer. I don't understand what you mean. That's my license. I compared the photo on the license to the woman in the truck. They matched perfectly, but the demographic information was impossible. The license showed David Morrison, male, born in 1990, but I was clearly looking at a woman who appeared to be in her mid-40s. By the end of my shift, I had made 8 traffic stops. Every single speeding vehicle displayed license plate Nevada 7 Alpha Charlie 8492. Every driver handed me a license in the name of David Morrison, regardless of their age, gender, or physical appearance. The photographs on the licenses always matched the person in front of me, but the name and details never changed. I started a log, documenting each stop with detailed descriptions of the vehicles and drivers. White sedan, middle-aged male. Red pickup, middle-aged female. Blue SUV, elderly man. Green convertible, young woman in her 20s. All different people, all different cars, all carrying identical registrations and licenses for a David Morrison who had died 3 years ago. The next morning, I set up at the same location and continued the documentation. The pattern held consistent. Every vehicle I clocked above the speed limit belonged to David Morrison, driven by David Morrison, regardless of the actual appearance of the driver or vehicle. On the third day, I decided to follow one of the speeders instead of making a stop. A black motorcycle passed me doing 92 miles per hour, plate number 7 Alpha Charlie 8492. Instead of pulling the rider over, I followed at a distance, curious to see where someone with David Morrison's registration might be heading. The motorcycle continued east on Route 50, maintaining a steady speed just above the limit. At milepost 65, exactly where David Morrison had died 3 years earlier, the bike began to slow down. The rider pulled onto the shoulder and stopped, removing the helmet to reveal a young woman with short blonde hair. I stopped behind her and approached on foot, expecting to find a breakdown or mechanical problem. But when I reached the motorcycle, the woman was standing beside it, staring at a section of guardrail that had been replaced after Morrison's fatal accident. "Is everything all right, ma'am?" She turned to look at me, and her eyes were unfocused, as if she were looking through me rather than at me. "I was supposed to be more careful," she said. I was supposed to slow down. Ma'am, are you David Morrison? I was supposed to make it home. She got back on the motorcycle and rode away eastbound, accelerating quickly past the accident site. I didn't pursue. Instead, I stood on the shoulder of Route 50, looking at the section of guardrail where David Morrison had died, wondering how many people were driving his registration to a destination he never reached. I requested a transfer to a different patrol area the following week. My supervisor approved it without question, though he seemed puzzled when I mentioned the unusual pattern of license plate duplications. According to the department's records, I had only made 3 traffic stops during my final week on that route, all to different vehicles with properly registered Nevada plates. But I still drive Route 50 occasionally during off-duty hours, and I still see them. Cars and trucks and motorcycles, all carrying plates that belong to someone who died trying to get home, all driven by people who give his name when asked, but continue past the place where his journey ended. Sometimes I wonder if David Morrison is still trying to complete that morning commute, borrowing the faces and vehicles of other speeders who share his urgency to reach a destination that becomes more distant the faster you drive toward it. The speed limit is still 75 miles per hour, but some drivers will always be running late. There are places where direction becomes meaningless, and every road leads back to where you started. I'm State Trooper Angela Cruz, 6 years with the New Mexico State Police, assigned to the Eastern District covering Interstate 40 between Tucumcari and the Texas border. It's straightforward work in unforgiving country, high desert plains that stretch endlessly under a sky so vast it makes you feel like an insect crawling across the bottom of a bowl. The interstate runs east-west through Quay County, connecting Albuquerque to Amarillo, carrying a steady stream of cross-country traffic through some of the most isolated landscape in the American Southwest. Interstate 40 through eastern New Mexico is a study in monotony, mile after mile of scrub brush and red dirt, broken occasionally by rest stops, truck stops, and small communities that exist primarily to service travelers. The mile markers tick by, in perfect sequence, one every 5,280 feet, placed with mathematical precision by highway engineers who understood that in country this empty, knowing exactly where you are becomes a matter of survival. My patrol area covers about 60 miles of highway, from milepost 100 to milepost 160. Most of my work involves routine traffic enforcement, speeders trying to make up time on the long stretches, truckers pushing their logbooks, the occasional drunk driver who thinks the emptiness provides cover for poor judgment. The New Mexico Department of Transportation maintains the mile markers religiously, replacing damaged signs and ensuring the numbering stays accurate. In country where GPS signals can be spotty and cell towers are 50 miles apart, those little green signs become lifelines. I've driven this route thousands of times, enough to memorize every landmark, every slight rise and dip in the road surface, every cluster of buildings visible from the highway. Mile marker 127 sits about halfway through my usual patrol loop, marking a section of interstate that runs perfectly straight for nearly 10 miles. Nothing remarkable about the location, typical high desert terrain, a few ranch gates visible in the distance, the endless expanse of blue-gray sage that defines this part of New Mexico. The anomaly started on a Thursday morning in November. I was heading west on my regular patrol, having just passed mile marker 130, when I noticed mile marker 127 ahead on the right shoulder. Nothing unusual about that. The markers are spaced exactly 1 mile apart, and I was traveling in the correct direction to encounter them in descending numerical order. But when I continued west and passed mile marker 126, then 125, I found myself approaching mile marker 127 again. Same green sign, same white numbers, same location on the right shoulder. According to my odometer, I had traveled exactly 1 mile between the two sightings, but mile markers don't repeat themselves. I pulled over and radioed dispatch to report a possible highway maintenance issue. Control, this is Unit 247. I'm showing duplicate mile markers on westbound I-40. Marker 127 appears to be posted twice, about 1 mile apart. Copy 247. I'll notify DOT maintenance. Can you provide GPS coordinates for the duplicate marker? I checked my GPS display. It showed my location as mile marker 127 on Interstate 40, which was correct. But it had shown the same coordinates when I passed the previous marker that also displayed 127. Control, GPS shows consistent readings. Both locations register as mile 127. Stand by, 247. While waiting for a response, I decided to investigate further. I made a U-turn at the next authorized turnaround and headed east, planning to document both markers and determine which one was incorrectly placed. As I drove eastbound, I passed the mile marker 127. I had just stopped near, then continued for exactly 1 mile according to my odometer. There was no mile marker 128. Instead, I found mile marker 127 again. I was now seeing the same mile marker from both directions traveling west. I encountered it twice in sequence. Traveling east, I also encountered it twice in sequence. Somehow, mile marker 127 had become both the beginning and end of a 1-mile stretch of highway that folded back on itself. Control, 247. I need supervisory assistance at my location. I'm encountering a highway anomaly that requires immediate investigation. Copy, 247. Sergeant Morrison is en route from Tucumcari. ETA, 20 minutes. While waiting for backup, I decided to observe the traffic patterns in this impossible mile. What I saw made me radio for additional units immediately. Every vehicle in the eastbound lanes was traveling west. Cars, trucks, motorcycles, all moving in the wrong direction for their designated traffic lanes. But they weren't driving erratically or creating dangerous conditions. They maintained proper spacing, used turn signals appropriately, and followed normal highway behavior. They were simply all going the wrong way. The westbound lanes were completely empty, no traffic at all, as if every westbound vehicle on Interstate 40 had vanished somewhere between the 2-mile marker 127s. I positioned myself on the shoulder and began documenting license plates and vehicle descriptions. A blue sedan with Texas plates, traveling west in the eastbound lanes. A red pickup with New Mexico plates, also heading west in the eastbound lanes. A semi-trailer with Kansas plates, maintaining the wrong direction in the wrong lanes while following all other traffic laws perfectly. I tried to initiate a traffic stop on the blue sedan, but the driver seemed unable to see me. I activated my emergency lights, positioned my patrol car to block the eastbound lanes, and stood in the roadway with my arms raised. The sedan continued toward me at highway speed, forcing me to dive onto the shoulder to avoid being struck. As it passed, I could see the driver clearly, a middle-aged woman, hands on the steering wheel, eyes focused straight ahead, completely normal except for the fact that she was driving west in eastbound lanes and couldn't see a state police officer standing directly in her path. Sergeant Morrison arrived as scheduled, but when his patrol car appeared in my rearview mirror, it was traveling east in the westbound lanes. He pulled up beside me and rolled down his window. "Cruz, what's the situation here?" "Sergeant, you're driving in the wrong lanes. All eastbound traffic is going west, and all westbound traffic has disappeared." Morrison looked genuinely confused. "I'm in the westbound lanes heading west toward your location. What do you mean about traffic directions?" I pointed at the empty eastbound lanes. "Sir, those are the eastbound lanes. They should have traffic moving toward Texas, but they're empty. All the eastbound traffic is in your lanes, heading the wrong direction." Morrison looked where I was pointing, then back at me with an expression of concern. Angela, those are the westbound lanes. I can see westbound traffic moving normally. Are you feeling all right? But I walked to his patrol car and looked at his GPS display. It showed him positioned in the westbound lanes of Interstate 40, heading west at mile marker 127. But from my perspective, he was clearly in the eastbound lanes. Sergeant, can you see any eastbound traffic? Of course, normal eastbound traffic, moving toward Amarillo in the eastbound lanes. I looked at the roadway. The lanes Morrison identified as containing eastbound traffic appeared completely empty to me. The lanes he saw as empty were full of westbound traffic driving in the wrong direction. We were looking at the same highway from the same position, but seeing completely different traffic patterns. Cruz, I want you to follow me back to the station. We need to have you evaluated by medical personnel. Morrison made a U-turn and headed east, but from my perspective, he had turned into empty lanes and was now driving alone through a section of highway where no other vehicles existed. I followed, watching him navigate what appeared to be vacant asphalt, while my radio crackled with his position reports to dispatch. Control, Morrison eastbound on I-40, approaching mile marker 128. But there was no mile marker 128. We were still traveling between the two instances of mile marker 127, trapped in a 1-mile loop where direction had lost all meaning. As we drove, I began to understand what was happening. The highway hadn't changed my perception of it had. Somehow, in that impossible mile between two identical markers, I had become unstuck from the shared reality that defined traffic direction, mile marker sequence, and the basic navigation that makes highway travel possible. Morrison could see normal traffic because he remained anchored to consensus reality. I could see the traffic that existed in whatever parallel version of Interstate 40 I had slipped into, where eastbound and westbound had reversed meanings and mile markers repeated themselves in defiance of mathematical logic. The medical evaluation found nothing wrong with me. Blood tests, neurological examination, psychiatric consultation, all normal. I was cleared for duty after a week of administrative leave, with a notation in my file about a possible stress-related incident requiring monitoring. But I still patrol that stretch of Interstate 40, and I still see the backwards traffic. Cars and trucks driving west in eastbound lanes empty of the traffic everyone else can see. Mile marker 127, appearing twice during every patrol, marking the boundaries of a section of highway where direction becomes negotiable and navigation follows rules that exist only for me. I've learned not to report it. The highway works fine for everyone else. They see normal traffic patterns, sequential mile markers, and a perfectly ordinary stretch of Interstate 40 connecting Tucumcari to the Texas border. Sometimes I wonder if I'm the one going the wrong direction, and everyone else is trying to correct a course I can no longer see. But the mile markers still read 127 on both sides of that impossible stretch, and the traffic still flows backward through lanes that should carry it toward a destination it will never reach. Some voices carry farther than the person speaking them ever intended to go. I'm State Trooper Robert Kim, 8 years with the Arizona Department of Public Safety, assigned to the Northwest District covering Highway 93 between Wickenburg and the Nevada border. It's demanding work in unforgiving desert, long stretches of 2-lane highway that wind through the Mojave, carrying traffic between Phoenix and Las Vegas through some of the most isolated terrain in the American Southwest. Summer temperatures reach 120 degrees, winter nights drop below freezing, and year-round, the desert tests every system in your patrol car and every assumption you have about how far civilization extends. Highway 93 is a lifeline for communities scattered across thousands of square miles of desert. Kingman, Wickenburg, Baghdad, towns that exist because of mining, ranching, or simply because someone needed to put services along the route to Las Vegas. The highway carries a mix of local traffic, tourists heading to gambling destinations, and commercial vehicles moving freight between major cities. It's also a corridor for breakdowns, heat exhaustion, and accidents caused by drivers unfamiliar with desert conditions. Radio communication is critical in this environment. Cell towers are sparse, and when something goes wrong on Highway 93, the police radio might be your only connection to help. The Arizona Department of Public Safety maintains a network of repeater stations to ensure coverage across the district, but the desert geography creates dead zones where radio signals bounce unpredictably off mountains and canyon walls. My radio call sign is 7 Alpha 12, and I've used it thousands of times over 8 years of patrol work. Traffic stops, accident reports, backup requests, routine status checks. Every interaction follows established protocols designed to ensure clear communication between field units and dispatch. You identify yourself, state your location, describe the situation, and wait for acknowledgement. Simple, standardized, essential for officer safety in country where the nearest backup might be 50 miles away. The anomaly began on a Tuesday morning in March. I was patrolling southbound on Highway 93 about 20 miles north of Wickenburg when I heard my own voice on the radio. Control, 7 Alpha 12. Traffic stop, mile marker 64 southbound Highway 93. Arizona plate, David Charlie 7492. Blue sedan, speeding violation. I hadn't made that call. I was driving alone on an empty highway, hadn't seen any traffic for the past 10 minutes, and hadn't initiated any stops. But the voice was unmistakably mine, same cadence, same pronunciation, even the slight hesitation I always have before stating license plate numbers. Copy 7 Alpha 12. Show you out on traffic stop, mile marker 64 southbound. Dispatch acknowledged the call normally, as if I had actually made it, but I was 15 miles north of mile marker 64, and there was no traffic to stop. I keyed my radio immediately. Control, 7 Alpha 12. Disregard previous transmission. I'm not out on a traffic stop. Currently northbound mile marker 79. Copy 7 Alpha 12. You're showing southbound mile marker 64 on a traffic stop. Please clarify your actual location. I looked at my GPS display. Mile marker 79, northbound Highway 93. Exactly as I had reported. But dispatch showed me at mile marker 64 on a traffic stop I hadn't made. Control, GPS confirms my location as mile marker 79 northbound. I have not initiated any traffic stops this morning. Stand by, 7 Alpha 12. While waiting for clarification, I decided to drive south toward mile marker 64 to investigate. As I approached the location, I could see a blue sedan on the shoulder with hazard lights flashing. Behind it was a Arizona Department of Public Safety patrol car with emergency lights activated, the same model as mine, with the same equipment package. I parked behind the patrol car and approached on foot. Through the rear window, I could see a trooper in the driver's seat, apparently running a license check on his mobile computer. When I tapped on the window, he looked up with an expression of confusion that quickly turned to alarm. He was me. Same face, same uniform, same badge number on the name tag, even the same small scar on the left side of my chin from a childhood accident. "Who are you?" he asked through the window. "I'm Trooper Kim, 7 Alpha 12. "Who are you?" "I'm Trooper Kim, 7 Alpha 12. This is my traffic stop." I looked at the blue sedan. The license plate read David Charlie 7492, exactly as reported in the radio call I hadn't made. The driver was a middle-aged woman who appeared to be waiting normally for the completion of a routine traffic stop. "What's your location?" I asked my duplicate. "Mile marker 64 southbound, Highway 93. Traffic stop for speeding violation." He held up his radar gun, showing a recorded speed of 87 miles per hour in a 65 zone. I radioed dispatch. "Control, 7 Alpha 12. Requesting supervisory assistance at mile marker 64 southbound." "Copy, 7 Alpha 12. Supervisor en route." My duplicate was also talking on his radio, but I couldn't hear his transmission. From his gestures and expressions, he appeared to be having a normal conversation with dispatch, probably requesting the same supervisory assistance I had just called for. 20 minutes later, Sergeant Williams arrived from Wickenburg. He approached my patrol car where I was waiting, having moved away from the impossible traffic stop to avoid further confusion. "Kim, what's the situation here?" "Sergeant, there's another trooper conducting a traffic stop at this location. He appears to be identical to me in every detail, including badge number and call sign." Sergeant Williams looked toward the traffic stop, then back at me with concern. "Kim, there's no other patrol car here. You're alone at this location." I pointed at the patrol car and the trooper who looked exactly like me. "Sir, there's a unit directly behind the blue sedan. Emergency lights activated. I see the blue sedan with hazard lights, but no patrol car and no other trooper. Are you feeling all right?" From Sergeant Williams's perspective, I was apparently alone at mile marker 64, reporting the presence of another officer who didn't exist. But I could see my duplicate clearly, completing his traffic stop in exactly the manner I would have followed. As I watched, my duplicate issued a citation to the driver, returned her license and registration, and prepared to clear the scene. His patrol car's emergency lights deactivated, and he pulled back onto Highway 93 heading south. At that moment, my radio crackled with my own voice. "Control, 7 Alpha 12, clear from traffic stop, mile marker 64. Continuing patrol southbound Highway 93. Copy, 7 Alpha 12. Clear from traffic stop 64, continuing patrol." But I was still standing beside my patrol car talking to Sergeant Williams at mile marker 64. Over the following weeks, the pattern continued. My voice would appear on the radio, reporting activities from locations I hadn't reached, describing situations that would unfold exactly as predicted when I eventually arrived at those locations. The radio calls always came from future versions of my patrol, broadcasting backwards through time to create an impossible loop of cause and effect. I would hear myself reporting an abandoned vehicle at mile marker 53, then drive to that location and find the vehicle exactly as described. I would hear myself requesting backup for an aggressive driver at mile marker 92, then encounter that exact situation when I reached the location an hour later. Dispatch had no record of these advanced transmissions. According to the official logs, I was making normal radio calls at appropriate times and locations. But I could hear my future voice providing information about situations that hadn't happened yet, creating a soundtrack of precognitive law enforcement that only I seemed to perceive. The phenomenon reached its culmination on a Thursday evening in April. I was patrolling northbound near Wickenburg when I heard my voice on the radio. "Control, 7 Alpha 12. Fatal accident. Mile marker 47 northbound Highway 93. Single vehicle rollover, driver ejected. Requesting ambulance and medical examiner response." I was 30 miles from mile marker 47, but I could hear the stress and exhaustion in my future voice as it described scene details, coordinated with emergency medical services, and managed the traffic control required for a fatal accident investigation. When I arrived at mile marker 47 2 hours later, I found everything exactly as my voice had predicted. Single vehicle rollover, driver ejected and deceased. Accident scene that required 6 hours of investigation and traffic management. I spent the rest of my shift working the scene, making the radio calls I had heard myself make earlier, completing a temporal loop that had no beginning and no end. I requested a transfer to patrol duties in the Phoenix metropolitan area, citing personal reasons. The request was approved without question, though my supervisor noted concerns about stress-related performance issues during my final evaluation. But sometimes, when I'm working patrol in the city, I still hear echoes of my voice from Highway 93. Radio calls describing traffic stops and accidents on a desert highway I no longer patrol, transmitted by a version of myself who continues to drive those endless miles between Wickenburg and the Nevada border, reporting incidents that exist in the space between prediction and fulfillment. The desert has its own sense of time, and some voices carry farther than their speakers ever intended to travel. There are documents that outlast the vehicles they were meant to certify, and sometimes the paperwork remembers what reality has forgotten. I'm State Trooper Jennifer Walsh, 5 years with the Vermont State Police, assigned to the Northwest Barracks covering Route 2 through Grand Isle County. It's peaceful work in beautiful country. The route follows the eastern shore of Lake Champlain north from Burlington, passing through small communities connected by bridges and causeways that span the lake's islands and inlets. During summer, the area fills with tourists drawn by the lake views and recreational boating. In winter, it becomes a quiet corridor, serving year-round residents who've chosen to live surrounded by water and sky. Route 2 through Grand Isle County requires regular vehicle inspections, part of Vermont's annual safety and emissions program. Every registered vehicle must display a current inspection sticker, showing it has passed mechanical and safety requirements. The stickers are color-coded by year and include specific monthly dates indicating when the next inspection is due. It's a straightforward system designed to keep unsafe vehicles off the road and ensure basic maintenance standards. Most of my patrol work involves routine traffic enforcement, speeders taking advantage of the scenic straightaways, tourists unfamiliar with local traffic patterns, the occasional drunk driver heading home from one of the lakefront restaurants. Vermont inspection violations are common, especially during the grace period when expired stickers haven't yet been renewed. I write dozens of inspection citations each month, usually to drivers who've simply forgotten to schedule their annual inspection or haven't had time to address minor mechanical issues. The inspection sticker system uses a simple color and date coding that makes violations easy to spot. Each year gets a distinctive color: blue, green, red, yellow, cycling through a predictable sequence. The month and year are printed clearly on each sticker, along with the name of the inspection station that certified the vehicle. Fake or altered stickers are rare but not unknown, usually involving attempts to extend expired dates or transfer stickers between vehicles. The anomaly began on a Monday morning in September. I was patrolling southbound Route 2 near Grand Isle Village when I noticed a pickup truck with what appeared to be an incorrect inspection sticker. The sticker was bright orange, a color I didn't recognize from the current year's coding system. When I pulled the vehicle over for a routine inspection check, I discovered the sticker was dated September 2025, exactly 1 year in the future. Good morning. I'm Trooper Walsh with Vermont State Police. The reason I stopped you is I need to check your vehicle inspection documentation. The driver was a middle-aged man wearing work clothes, polite and cooperative. He handed me his license and registration without any sign of concern about the inspection sticker issue. Sir, your inspection sticker shows a date of September 2025. Can you explain why you have a sticker dated 1 year in the future? He looked genuinely confused. Officer, I had the truck inspected last month at Morrison's garage in South Hero. They said everything checked out fine. I examined the sticker more closely. It appeared to be genuine Vermont inspection documentation, correct format, proper security features, official appearance. The station name was Morrison's Garage, South Hero, with a valid inspection station number, but the date was impossible. Sir, it's currently September 2024. This sticker shows September 2025. He looked at the sticker, then at me with an expression of honest bewilderment. Officer, I don't understand. Morrison told me the inspection was good for 1 year from last month. I walked back to my patrol car and ran his registration through the Vermont Motor Vehicle database. What came back made me double-check the license plate number I had entered. The vehicle was listed as totaled in a collision on Route 2 in March of 2024. According to the database, the truck had been declared a total loss by the insurance company and should have been scrapped or sold for parts 6 months ago. But I was looking at the same truck in perfect condition, driven by the registered owner who appeared to be unaware that his vehicle had been destroyed half a year earlier. I returned to his window with growing unease. "Sir, can you tell me about any accidents you've had with this vehicle?" "No accidents, officer. I've been driving this truck for 3 years, never had any problems with it." According to our records, this vehicle was totaled in a collision in March. "Do you remember anything about an accident on Route 2 earlier this year?" He thought for a moment, then shook his head. "No, officer. I think there might be some kind of database error. The truck's never been in an accident." I issued him a warning for the inspection irregularity and advised him to contact the Department of Motor Vehicles to resolve the registration status issue. As he drove away, I radioed dispatch to report the database discrepancy, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental was wrong with what I had just witnessed. Over the next week, I began paying closer attention to inspection stickers during routine traffic stops. What I discovered made me request a meeting with my supervisor immediately. Every vehicle I stopped had an inspection sticker dated exactly 1 year in the future. Orange stickers showing September 2025, when the current valid stickers should have been green and dated September 2024. Every single vehicle, without exception, displayed inspection documentation from a year that hadn't happened yet. But when I ran their registrations, every vehicle came back as totaled, scrapped, or otherwise destroyed in accidents that had occurred months earlier. Cars that had been demolished in collisions were driving Route 2 with perfect inspection stickers certified by legitimate Vermont inspection stations for dates that wouldn't arrive for another year. I documented 17 cases over 5 days, creating a file of vehicles that existed and didn't exist, simultaneously physically present and mechanically sound, but officially destroyed according to state records. "Sergeant Morrison, I need to discuss an unusual pattern I've been observing during routine traffic enforcement." "What kind of pattern, Walsh?" "I've encountered 17 vehicles in the past week that show inspection stickers dated 1 year in the future, but database checks show all the vehicles as totaled or scrapped." Morrison looked at my documentation, reviewing the license plate numbers, inspection dates, and database printouts showing the vehicles as destroyed. "Walsh, these database entries show accident dates from several months ago. Are you sure you're running the correct plate numbers?" "Yes, sir. I've double-checked every entry. The vehicles I'm stopping physically match the license plates and descriptions, but the database shows them as destroyed." Morrison accessed the Vermont Motor Vehicle database from his computer and ran several of the plate numbers I had documented. His results showed current, valid registrations with no accident history and correct inspection dates for 2024. "Walsh, I'm showing normal registration status for these vehicles. Current inspections, no accident history, everything appears to be in order." I looked at his screen. The same plate numbers that had shown as totaled when I ran them were displaying as active, valid registrations when Morrison accessed the system. "Sir, when I ran these plates last week, they all showed as totaled. Now they're showing as valid registrations?" "The database doesn't show any history of totaled status for these vehicles. Are you sure you're not confusing plate numbers?" That evening, I drove Route 2 during off-duty hours, observing traffic and inspection stickers without making any official stops. What I saw confirmed my growing suspicion that I had become unstuck from the shared reality that governed vehicle registration and inspection. Every car displayed orange inspection stickers dated 2025. But when other troopers ran the same plates I had documented, they found normal registration status and current inspection dates. The temporal displacement that allowed me to see future inspection stickers also showed me vehicles as destroyed in a database that reflected different accident histories depending on who was accessing it. I was seeing cars that had been destroyed and replaced by identical versions of themselves, complete with inspection stickers that certified their safety for a year that existed only in whatever parallel timeline I had slipped into. The last entry in my documentation file was my own patrol car. During a routine equipment check, I discovered an orange inspection sticker on my vehicle showing a date of September 2025. When I ran my own vehicle's registration, it came back as totaled in a single vehicle accident on Route 2, with Trooper Jennifer Walsh listed as the fatality. I requested medical leave the following day, citing stress-related concerns that required evaluation. The department approved a 2-week administrative leave, while I underwent psychological assessment and fitness for duty evaluation. The evaluations found nothing wrong with me. Clean blood work, normal neurological function, no signs of psychological disturbance. I was cleared for return to duty, with a recommendation for continued monitoring and stress management counseling. But I don't patrol Route 2 anymore. I requested reassignment to administrative duties, processing paperwork, and managing evidence storage at the Northwest Barracks. The work keeps me off the road, where inspection stickers remember dates that haven't arrived yet, and vehicles continue driving after they've been destroyed. Sometimes, though, I see orange stickers in the barracks parking lot, on personal vehicles belonging to other troopers, on patrol cars scheduled for maintenance, on visitors' cars parked near the front entrance. Always dated exactly 1 year in the future, always on vehicles that exist in whatever timeline allows paperwork to outlast the reality it was meant to document.